Apex 2012, Hungrybox clears his losers run and faces Armada in grand finals. Sitting beside them are the respective coaches, which at the time was pretty common, and the set runs as accordingly. The players play their games, and the coaches give advice after the game. However, it was in between game 3 and 4 where HBox's coach steps down from the stage and arises a random player from the crowd. Not only does he become HBox's new coach for the rest of the set, but he starts to give him advice during the game. A clear 2-1 disadvantage to Armada, but why did this happen? What caused this moment to become a spur of discussion on how professionally Melee should be treated? More of this later, but first I think we need to bring that up. Coaching is an interesting topic in Smash. It's something that's forbidden to use in tournaments now, but sounds like it should make sense to have. With sports like tennis and boxing, athletes are able to talk with their coaches between rounds to figure out what strategies they can utilize that are optimal in defeating their opponent. In terms of Smash, however, you're basically cheating. With services like Metafy, coaching can offer great one-on-one sessions from the best players that have ever touched a game. Only issue is, these players aren't really your coach. They're just there on the website to call players like you dog water and making money out of it. But you don't see the best players today coming into top 8 with any coaches cause it's just weird to have. But if you were to say that like 9 years ago, people would disagree but understand what you're trying to convey. There was a time when players adopted mid-set coaching. Pretty self-explanatory. You have someone, typically a friend or another player, give you advice in the middle of your set, preferably after a game has been finished. While most players saw this as extra time for them to take breaks longer than Wizrobe, others took advantage of mid-set coaching as a supplement for them to learn their mistakes right after a match and figure out the best way to adapt to their opponent's techniques in the next one. Now obviously this 2v1 situation doesn't seem fair for the one, which brought up heavy debates regarding mid-set coaching. Should this even be allowed? Who counts as a coach? Does the crowd yelling count as a coach? Should they be banned? Now there were a lot of discussions regarding this, but before recognizing the end result, we should probably take it back to the Stone Age real quick. Since the first tournament was hosted back in 2000, I don't know and I'm too lazy to find out, Melee's grassroots nature has long established a familiar match experience where players compete in the bracket and apply all the skills they've learned onto each game. Along with other competitive games that are coming out, coaching was at a primal stage.
I'm pocket controller, dog! I'm pocket controller!
Back then, if you wanted to coach someone, you could just do it.
No jump, no jump!
I mean, there were no qualifications for people to coach their friends. It was a Nintendo game, nobody cared. When crew battles used to be in rooms like these, players would just yell at you and say like, watch for grabs, wave that shout, grab a stick and twist it.
Oh my god, dude, this is an MMA fight, dude!
You know, just good reminders. But this was pretty much the starting point of mid-set coaching. The reason why people didn't care at the time was that 1, it mostly happened in crew battles, and 2, there was no competition between players. Melee was just being born as a competitive game, and people wanted to play it because it looked cool. Yet as higher stakes started to make the scene more serious, more rules were being implemented to advocate fair play, including the ban of mid-set coaching. But of course, like all Melee players, their one flaw is not listening. 2017 was around the time when people started to realize the unfair advantages of coaching and shortly banning them, including the one tournament that every Melee player now hates. Hungrybox and SFAT are matched against each other to see who qualifies for top 8. Game 1 starts, it ends, and HBox immediately gets coaching advice from Crunch.
I thought coaching was banned in semifinals. I'm like pretty confident that it's actually not allowed in semifinals.
The problem with this was that mid-set coaching, and coaching in general, had been banned for all matches beyond pools. Yet Crunch was told by word of mouth that it was only banned in top 8. Unknowingly, therefore, Crunch would give advice to HBox, but would shortly get disqualified due to tournament rules. Or at least that's what should have happened. Instead, G-Money would run up on stage and start coaching SFAT as an attempt to mock Crunch. Had this not have happened, would HBox get disqualified? But because the TOs didn't report anything and SFAT didn't even know about the rule, the game just continued. And since G-Money went up to be SFAT's coach with actually some of the best coaching techniques we've ever seen, this meant that both players technically violated these rules, which prevented HBox from being disqualified. This match would end off with not only a 2-1 win from HBox, who eventually placed 3rd in the whole tournament, but also stirred up some drama online. It was one of the bigger incidents that added on to the debate with whether or not coaching should be legal in tournaments. I mean, it's gotten to a point where players are now poking fun at these actions, so why should it even be used in the first place? On one side of the argument, mid-set coaching is essential for elevating the level of play. It allows players to adapt quicker and maintain a positive attitude throughout the set. If players were getting coaching lessons outside of tournaments, then what makes it any different to have a coach inside? It's more of a supplement than a cheating source. On the other side of this argument, however, mid-set coaching makes no sense. Melee has always been a one-on-one game, unless you play doubles or, God forbid, this. 1v1s have been the standard way we play Smash the most competitively. Almost everyone can get behind this since it's the fairest way to play. You're relying on your own abilities to win the game. And a big part of playing your game is the ability to adapt. When you recognize your own mistakes after game 1 and then you're able to fix them the next game, that's a good sign of adaptability. Being able to adapt on things like spacing, counterplay, and inputs is perhaps the most important skill to learn, which kind of translates into the hypeness of a game. All of these decisions are made in the moment. It's every player for themselves. So when you have a coach telling you what to adapt and are choosing the next decisions for you to make, you might as well just give them your controller. Mid-set coaching is unfair to a majority of the scene. Not everyone knows people who's able to coach a competitive game, let alone one that's solely on the player to prepare accordingly. When you watch chess, for example, you don't see Magnus asking people what move he should make next. It's all a game of decision making. And when your friend explicitly tells you how to escape your opponent's chain grab, you're given the unfair advantage of just using the best solutions given to you without actually finding it out yourself. And it's not just for the reason of keeping matches solely on the player's hands, but also for the integrity of the game. Now, let's go back to this set. Hungrybox is like, why is it always him? Well, he's against Armada in Grand Finals of Apex 2012, 5 years back from the incident at EVO, but perhaps the clearest reason why mid-set coaching was banned altogether. To give better context of this set, Armada has been using Youngling to counter the slow-paced gameplay against HBox's Puff with a focus on zoning and using projectiles. It seemed that Armada was gonna take the set easily after winning the first 2 games, but with a huge mess up on his down air would HBox take game 3.
And he calls him going down. Hungrybox is on the board. He is finally on the board. He's not going to get it.
Now, at this point, both players had their own coaches sitting beside them and giving advice or keeping their mental up after a game. And for the most part, neither of them had talked to their respective players besides the time they were able to between the games. However, it was after game 3 where we see the problem. Sabrick, a well-known Brawl player at the time, came up on stage and started talking with HBox, but not to keep his mental up. From here on, we don't even see HBox's last coach that was just sitting next to him a minute ago. Now it's just Sabrick sitting really close to him. Almost too close. In fact, I think he's even... Nah! Not only would Sabrick offer advice to HBox on this slower paced matchup, but he would also give him advice in the middle of the game. And this feedback would be immediate, whispering HBox to be aware of Armada's zoning patterns or play patiently against his bombs.
Look at Hack, who's Armada's coach, so to speak. He's silent, stoic, not really saying much. Seabrook constantly giving instructions. It's like 2-on-1 right now. Yeah. It's ice climbers, basically.
And you can tell how big of an impact this coaching was compared to the first 2 games, as HBox now has to control during most of the match, eventually timing out Armada in game 4. Game 5 starts, and again, Sabrick does the exact same thing, even keeping HBox's hopes up after he takes Armada's stock. Eventually, HBox times out Armada again to reset the bracket, but for the first time, he's not popping off.
And we're going to set number 2, Seabrick MVP. Is this what you wanted from Apex? Is this what you wanted from Apex?
Ultimately for HBox, and for the rest of the crowd, Armada would win the second set in a 3-0 fashion and claim first in Apex 2012. So now the question is, why did this happen in the first place? I don't know. You would think a case like this would be immediately banned when a crowd of this scale clearly sees this happening live. The thing was, this was over 10 years ago, and coaching was just something that TOs allowed at the time. They didn't think of the potential risks mid-set coaching would have since nobody really had a professional background on this. Again, Melee has always been grassroots, and because this wasn't a tournament standard at any event, nobody thought much about this and kind of left the pros to do their own thing, even if it meant bringing someone in to help a player adapt during a game. So, obviously, mid-set coaching has long been banned, but it really is interesting to see a time when Smash allowed this to be legal in the biggest majors. And I say Smash because it wasn't just Melee. In fact, it was probably even worse for Project M and Brawl because of how matchup-based both games were, where knowledge became more important than experience. It's good that we found a solution to this soon enough though, which was also kind of decided naturally as Melee just became more of a professional game. So whenever you go attend your next local and you see someone sitting much much closer to the player than they should, it's best to just report it. Big thank you to Tafflekins for inspiring the video to be made in the first place. Please go check out his Twitter or X. No, I'm calling it Twitter. Okay. For more Melee related content.